So as well as envelopes down here, another format we have for modulators is LFO, or low frequency oscillator, which is another standard type. Clicking on LFO1, for example, it works in this similar way to the envelope, where I can use this section to assign it to a particular parameter. So once again, maybe let's go for oscillator pitch. Turn up the amount. So you can probably hear that this is the kind of classic method for creating lots of different FX type sounds. At the moment it sounds a bit like a ray gun, but yeah, if you modulate these parameters with other parameters, with other modulators that is, you can create all kinds of very cool effects. If I slow it right down using the rate dial here, you'll hear the LFO modulating the pitch up and down more slowly, so you can hear what the LFO is actually doing to the sound more clearly. You can hear the sound gets very interesting as the rate gets much higher there. In fact, it turns into frequency modulation, which is exactly what happens when a oscillator is used to modulate the pitch, or rather the frequency, of another oscillator. You start to get the introduction of a sideband, so an additional frequency or tone. So yeah, the beginnings of frequency modulation. Of course, the frequency goes much higher with FM. As well as being able to set a free rate here, we can synchronize it using the sync switch, and then you can see now if I adjust the dial that we get the time in actual divisions of the bar of our project. So it's for creating rhythmic effects that are tempo locked to our track. You can hear this is particularly useful when you're modulating things like filters and so on. As well as being able to change the speed of the LFO, you can change its waveform. You can see on the display here, I can change it from a triangle wave to a square wave where it jumps up and down. Or blend in between using the slider there. And we're not just limited to a sine wave. We can, of course, choose any one of these other waveforms from the oscillator section to create any number of much more complex LFO modulation effects. As well as changing the waveform, we can change the phase. So set to 0 here, you can hear it kind of starts at a random position in the LFO waveform. So the start of a note sometimes is going up in pitch, sometimes down. Whereas if I use this phase dial here, I could set it so the pitch slide is always going downwards. So it gives you a little bit more consistency with the sound. We've also got an amp dial here for increasing the intensity or the amount of effect the LFO has. And then we have this sim dial at the top here, which is basically an offset, which increases the range, or rather shifts the range that the LFO modulates the control up and down. So if I put it to the right here, you'll hear the pitch going up. And we'll look at various examples of how to use all these controls in specific ways in our patch creation modules later on.